Here we are. Hello.
Hello. We've got our fancy new equipment and our new backdrop, and we're looking a bit professional, aren't we?
Not without a lot of tears in the background and a lot of emergency calls.
And patience, my goodness. We should do a podcast on over 50s in technology.
Actually, that would be, I reckon a lot of people would be interested in that. I don't know how much they would learn from us, though.
If I had to download one more useless app to do something. Anyway, we are here today with the topic of menopause.
Yes.
Why didn't I know that?
Yes.
And we actually have come across something that none of us knew about until literally...
I had no idea because of my personal circumstances, so we'll talk about that.
Yes.
But it was something that you showed me that I went, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, neither did I. Yeah. So talk about oversharing. It's something that we as women generally do. This is definitely an overshare.
Yes.
So I went to the doctor for just a routine appointment, and as you're leaving, you think, yes, I've got away with all that, everything's been ticked, I'm good and healthy. And then she says, oh, by the way, Kirsty, when did you have your pap smear last? Yeah. And you just go, oh.
I think everybody just goes a little,
oh. And I was like, I don't know. She said, let me have a look for you. And you just know, don't you? She says, guess what? You're due for your regular check. I was like, oh, when? Okay. when do I have to do that? She says, well, we don't do it like we used to anymore. And I was like, oh, don't we? What do we do now? And this is what she showed me.
I had no idea about this because the last time I had a pap smear, it was that lie back and relax.
Oh my goodness me. So she said it's actually a take-home kit now. And I was like, first of all, I'm thinking, I'm not taking home a speculum and doing this myself. Like, that's just...
Even just the mention of a word speculum and seeing that silver object is just,
it's just...
duck mouth.
Yuck. Anyway, so now, ladies, this is what she gave me. So
I wonder how many other women have got this or know
I don't know. Yeah. So for those of you who are listening and not viewing, I'm going to describe what it is. But it's a plastic bag. It comes in, just the size of like an A4 piece of paper, really. And inside it is.
You can open it up, Kirsty. It's got your pathology form, so here's your pathology script from the doctor.
Yep, and then it has got a set of instructions. There's obviously two input. There we go, got it out.
Set of instructions.
But it's just a long
test tube.
That's all it is, with a long cotton bud in it, just like a test, like
a swab.
Oh, like a swab. You know, when you see in the movies and they do the DNA swab in your mouth, that's exactly what it looks like.
Except it doesn't go in your mouth.
It does not go in your mouth. It's about 20 centimeters long. Yeah. You literally, there we go. It's as thin. It's thinner than a tampon.
Yes,
or about the size of a small tampon.
So no woman should have any problem inserting it.
Yeah, basically, and you just undo the cap. You insert it up to the line that's on the on the tube, and you just turn it around for around 20 to 30 seconds. So it collects tissue sample, exactly. Then you pull it out, you put it in the tube, and you go drop it off at pathology, and that's it. And I was like,
and how often are you meant to have this?
Well, still the same.
It's
still 5 years.
So isn't that interesting? Every 5 years, I sort of have a bit of concern with that because I think in 5 years so much can change.
Yep.
Especially with tissue changes in the body because so many things influence that.
It's only 5 years if your previous smear was clear, but I think you're quite right, and I don't know, to be honest. Something I'll ask when I go back to her next, when we get to a certain age, do those pap smears increase
or do the risks decrease so we don't have to? Because when I was still having pap smears, it was every 2 years.
Had you always had clear pap smears though?
Yeah, I had one that wasn't so great, many years ago, but after that, I just find, and just with what I know about health and how the tissue in the body can change because it responds to stresses so easily, and then the proliferation of unhealthy cells can get out of control, and that can happen very quickly. So
the good thing here is that, one, it means that it's not so scary to have it done.
Absolutely.
And this has been part of the reason why so many women fall behind on their pap smears, because we all know how uncomfortable
Yeah.
You know, and it can be very painful.
For some women,
it is. And, you know, especially for women as we get older.
Yes.
And this is one of the things, especially as we get going through menopause, and if we're suffering from, especially if we're suffering from vaginal dryness, then a pap smear can be even more uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it is quite important to actually, you know, if you are suffering with that and you are coming up for a pap smear and this is not yet available, though I can't see why it wouldn't be.
Well, it must be.
But you can talk to your doctor. There are, you know, ways that, you know, they can make it, well, I'm not going to say more comfortable, but to make you more comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it increases, you know, the rate of women doing it, then that's a good thing. If people are putting it off because they're scared of the speculum and the pain, and then this is a lovely alternative, then maybe the numbers are good. And the good thing about science is that we have this testing available. It's like the bowel screening kit too. You know, we have this available for preventative health, and we should take advantage of that.
Well, something like this means that, you know, when the doctor says to you it's time for a pap smear, like you can do it there. You don't have to take it home. I brought it home because I saw it. I was like, oh, I really want to share this with other women so that they know when they go to the doctors now. Like if the doctor is still, you know, performing the other one, you can actually ask for this, and knowing that it's available. But how good is this also, like for younger kids or the younger girls, I should say, you know, that put off having pap smears.
Definitely.
Oh, and you know, and then having to go, nothing worse either than having an abnormal one and then being called back to do another one.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
I've been
just
through
awful.
that, and it is. So, you know, pap smears are designed for women once they start having sex. So after that is the time then that you should start to have a regular pap smear. And it is a really important part of the screening process.
Well, let's go back in time. I mean, I did some research on Google this morning. And we actually, pap smears first started, became a worldwide clinical tool for testing for early detection of cancer in 1941.
Which isn't that
84 years.
It seems like a lot, but it's actually not. 1941, you think, wow, okay. It's, you know, I suppose that's why many women died of things that they didn't know about.
But 84 years of this, you know, we're going to look back on this and you
we
say,
haven't evolved.
Like our grandchildren, for example, will never know what the women that 100 years prior to them have ever experienced, what we endured, you know, all in the name of science or of fighting.
It'll be in a museum.
Next to the iron chastity belt.
Yes, exactly.
So anyway, ladies, that's one thing that I wanted to share with you this morning. But then that kind of prompted us to, you know, to have a chat about other things that are only related to the female reproductive system.
Absolutely. And testing that is available, or testing that's come a long way with other reproductive issues that women face, and things that are, I suppose, growing in numbers too. We're seeing more of these things. So, you know, the question also needs to be around of why are we seeing more of this being? Is it because we have better diagnostics now that we're able to, you know, diagnose these things? Or is there something wrong with the way we're living?
I would say the latter.
I think there's a lot with that, actually.
Definitely the latter.
We'll just touch on quickly about, you know, I mentioned I don't have pap smears anymore because one of the things we're going to talk about is when you have a partial or a full hysterectomy. So women, that changes your hormone profile, it changes your hormone output. So when you have a partial hysterectomy, it means that you've had your uterus and sometimes your cervix removed, but your ovaries stay in place. So you will still be producing hormones, right, that will regulate. So you won't go into instant menopause. When you have a full hysterectomy, that means they take everything, including the ovaries. Now, those women will experience a very quick decline into menopause because
it's called a medical-induced menopause, isn't it?
Because where they relied on their ovaries to produce these hormones to keep them balanced, they've been taken away. So all of a sudden, you know, our adrenal gland, which does make a small amount of hormones, has to sort of kick into place and take over that function. And while it doesn't produce as much, it still produces enough to be able to balance the hormones naturally. But the problem is women just dive into this medically induced menopause so quickly that symptoms become so intense.
They are very intense.
But the thing is, when you don't have a uterus, and for me, I don't have a cervix, so I had my cervix removed. Now, most women think that the cervix is part of the vagina, and it's not. It's further up. It is attached to your uterus, so it's the very top part of the uterus. So the vagina is the other bit. So that's all I have left. So in that instance, I don't have pap smears anymore unless the only thing you'd have is vaginal cancers, but they are very, very rare.
So how did you go with your hormones? Like, was there
well, because I have my ovaries, I was pretty healthy going into my hysterectomy, and I had a very positive attitude. There's a lot of things that come into play. A lot of women have massive regrets about losing their reproductive organs. That's a huge component of how they recover too.
It's a common question that people ask, like, do you feel empty inside? No,
I shouldn't really laugh, should I? It's because,
or
physically...
should I say, did you? Because it's a number of years ago now.
Because you're taking physically something out, but also, it's a big part of your life. I've had 3 children, I bore 3 healthy kids, and I was having massive, problems with my menstrual cycle that I tried everything medically and naturally to heal. So I used, both types of medicine. Unsuccessfully. I'd had some big babies. Both my boys were very big. I had a lot of structural issues. I had some endo, which we're going to talk about. So there were a lot of issues, and I was literally hemorrhaging every month.
Oh, wow.
To the point where I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go out. So I was really, isolated at home.
Did you get anemia from that?
Oh yeah, always had.
Yep.
So that's always part of the picture too.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as the hormones go, I think because I was aware of it, and being a naturopath, maybe I was a little bit of a foot in front. So I knew to take herbs and supplements and everything that would help support my adrenals, help support my nervous system, and help support all those other body pathways that then had to come in and help balance my body in a different way. Because it's a big operation, nobody will come out of that saying, oh, that was easy. It's a long recovery, and you have to be really careful. But yeah, it's just with time and patience, and it absolutely makes a difference about your mental attitude going in. And I speak to lots of women, and they're surprised when I say I've had a hysterectomy being a naturopath, because they just think, oh, we're all natural, we don't have to go through stuff like that, but we do. But if I say to them, if you make peace with it, make peace that you've made the decision that is best for your body, that will allow you, you're still a female, doesn't take away the fact that you're a woman.
Yes.
Okay,
you're
so
still a woman.
Let's not undermine that. You've your reproductive organs have done what you've wanted them to do. You've born children, and unfortunately, something's gone wrong, and they're not it's not giving you a happy life. So make peace with it before you go in, and you will recover so much better. Because
it is very interesting
attitude.
what you said, though, because it's almost like a stereotype. People think that because you're a naturopath or because you're in the health industry, that nothing goes wrong, or that you live this clean life, and you wouldn't even have a grain of sugar or a cup of coffee.
I drink champagne.
It's not the case at all, and especially when it comes to medical things, sometimes you just have no control over that.
And that's where we embrace the best of the medical world, because aren't we lucky to be living in a time where we have this available to us?
Yeah. So. Well, that kind of brings us on to really like the next topic, going from hysterectomies.
Yes.
Let's talk about it'll come to me in a second. Thank you. Endometriosis. So that's been in the news a lot lately, and it's certainly been highlighted with young Bindi Irwin, who's been dealing with. She's been in hospital. She's about 6 weeks post surgery now. She's been
dealing with it for most of her menstrual life. Yes, because it does sort of start to show up quite early, with very painful periods, sometimes very heavy periods as well. Not necessarily always, but that is usually.
So let's start with what is endometriosis? What is the definition of it?
Endo is where the tissue of the inside of the uterus tends to grow or thicken on the outside of the uterus. So it's where tissue doesn't normally grow. Sometimes it can adhere to other parts of the reproductive organs too. So me personally, I had some endo that adhered my uterus to my bowel. So that was a bit of an issue, and obviously there's a lot of pain associated, because as that endothelial tissue grows, it can create a lot of pain. It can create scar tissue. And what happens too is when you have your period, there's usually this buildup of blood that gets trapped in that endothelial cells. And then when you have a heavy period, there's a lot of pain and cramping that comes with it. It's very underdiagnosed. We're getting better at it, because I think it's more in the news now than it used to be.
Well, people used to consider it was just like bad PMS. They just got like, I've got bad pains, but before,
or you're exaggerating.
Yeah, or you're exaggerating. Take a Panadol and go and lie down.
Yeah.
But yes, the last 10 years, I've certainly noticed a huge increase in the actual diagnosis. Yeah. And the good thing about once that is being diagnosed, it can be properly treated. Whereas, if you go back to when I was younger, it went so untreated because it wasn't recognised. It was just every time you had your period, you just had a bad period or you had bad pain.
Exactly. And there's so many different reasons for having bad periods. I mean, my daughter has been diagnosed with endo as well. And, to be honest, I probably didn't take as much notice of it as I should have earlier on, because I had heavy periods and I just put up with it and did it. So I sort of thought, here, have a Panadol and you'll be right, or gave her some other natural anti-inflammatories and we tried. But, the treatment for endo, that's the tough thing, because every woman will experience endometriosis a little bit differently because of where it's positioned in the reproductive organs. So it's a really tough one, and you have to do some...
Sorry, is that because, like, as you said, where was it? The endometriosis where...
Mine's the uterus.
Yeah, so here, do you say like the uterus can grow pretty much over any organ?
Yeah, well, the reproductive organs. It tends to stay to the reproductive organs because it's that type of tissue.
But it can grow in different places.
Well, it can adhere to other things, and then that causes a lot of pain. So then you'll have problems with urination because it could adhere to your bladder. You can have problems with constipation because it adheres to your bowel. And, of course, then that creates pain.
Right.
You're going to have irregular periods. There's just so many different elements, and of course a lot of it just gets mistaken for irritable bowel syndrome. Well,
that's exactly that's why when you were saying that, I was like, I can understand now why there is so much misdiagnosis.
I mean, you've got to understand our organs, everything's placed really carefully and closely within this space. It's amazing. Look, people think your uterus is huge. It's not. It's smaller than your fist, so it's not that big when it's not a womb and carrying a child. But it can cause all manner of things. And there are, I suppose the medical industry doesn't have a reason why women are having endo. It is being diagnosed more again. Is that because of our diagnostic tools, or is it because and I guess to think that it has a lot to do with lifestyle and things that are now disrupting our hormones. And that would be things like plastics in our food. They, research is now saying that there is no baby born without residual traces of plastic in their bloodstream.
Wow.
That's what they're saying now. So that shows you how prolific plastic is in our life. Also things like cosmetics, makeup, shampoos, conditioners, body creams, all these things that we apply to ourselves that contain thousands and thousands of chemicals that disrupt. They're called xenoestrogens and disrupt our hormones.
Wow, that's scary, isn't it?
And then then there's the whole food thing. Well,
that's a whole that's 4 podcasts put together.
So endo, it's definitely a growing concern. Yeah. But the sooner you get onto it, the sooner there are some treatment options, and that will include some hormone treatments or some natural anti-inflammatories, and having a look at what's going on in your lifestyle that can be adjusted.
Wow. Okay. Well, that was
ultimately surgery.
Yeah. Okay. That was interesting. All right. Let's now talk about PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Yes.
So we'll start with the definition of this, so that people really can't understand what it is. We've got here it's a hormone disorder causing enlarged ovaries with small cysts on the outer edges, causing irregular periods and high levels of hormone androgen. Excuse me.
So yes, again, another hormone disorder. It's like which comes first. It's a symptom of something going wrong. So PCOS, or polycystic ovarian syndrome, where there are cysts on the ovaries. Now, a lot of the time that will present as irregular periods. It means you've got too much androgen in your system, which is a hormone that, again, is released from your adrenals. So we need to look at what's going on with the adrenals and why aren't they functioning properly, or why are they overproducing androgens. And the polycystic ovaries means that the ovaries aren't working the way that they should. A lot of the time, and not always, so I'm not shaming anyone here, but a lot of the time it has a connection with obesity and diabetes. Okay. So you do find that a lot of women with PCOS have weight management issues, and they usually have glucose and insulin dysregulation as well.
And do we know why? Do we know why there is a correlation between being overweight and diabetes? Like what do they think?
Well,
is
being
causing
overweight and
that?
diabetes is all about insulin resistance and just the rate at which insulin is dumped from the pancreas. So again, a lot of lifestyle issues are attributed to that. And one of the biggest changes that you need to make, and one of the best solutions for anyone that is especially type 2 diabetic and with insulin resistance, is eating vegetables. Because vegetables contain a fibre that slows down the release of sugar and insulin in your system, right? So your body can then regulate it properly. So vegetables, I know it's a dirty word for a lot of people.
But are you, so this is going to be, like, this is probably going to sound like a silly question, but when we say vegetables, does that mean we have to, when I say eat, I mean actually have that physical motion of chewing, like our jaw creating saliva, or can we, because so many people do, juice them and drink them? Does it have the same effect, or are they the two different things?
Very different. When you're juicing them, you're only getting basically the sugar content from a vegetable, which is fine if you have good blood sugars and you can a vegetable juice is fantastic. I love it, but it's about the fibre, and when you masticate food and chew it, that is the first part of digestion. As soon as you put that in your mouth, then it goes through that breaking down process. But it's that soluble and insoluble fibre that your body needs, not only to maintain good microbiome for your gut, but also your elimination pathways, so you're not constipated, so you haven't got recirculating toxins and hormones in your system that get reabsorbed through the walls, and then you have all sorts of hormone havoc and toxic havoc going on. So eating vegetables. There's a huge push to a lot of the MLM companies which push fruit and veggie capsules. It's okay, you don't need to eat your fruit and veggies. If you miss out here, you can have a capsule instead.
It's mad.
It doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't.
It just doesn't. No. You are better off. I love the fact, and I'm going to give Woolies a big shout out here, because I love the fact they have baskets of free fruit at the door, apples and bananas and pears and whatever's in season for the kids.
Yep.
Like, please take a piece of fruit and please encourage your kids. This is where it begins.
Yep.
Yeah. So PCOS is another one of those things that, it needs another holistic approach. What's going on in your body? And the one thing I hadn't mentioned with endo, and it's the same with PCOS, and it's a common trigger for both, stress. Stress is a trigger for so many things. So many things. And, you have to look at, okay, we've got PCOS, we've got endo, we have all these things that can go wrong. They are symptoms of something else. They are not the cause of your problem. They are a symptom of something. And when we have a symptom, we need to look at what is the causative factor, what's driving these changes in your body. And you can't just say, oh, it's a hormone imbalance. Well, yes, that is part of the picture, but there's always so much more to look at. And it will take a holistic approach, because our modern lifestyle has a hell of a lot to answer for.
Look, and that does explain why so many young people these days, are getting these diagnoses, because with the introduction of social media, we have seen this increase of stress, this elevation of stress in our young people that we never experienced. The bullying that's, the cyberbullying, influences. We never had any of that growing up.
Making life look perfect when it isn't.
That's exactly right. We didn't even have screens.
Well, I think they said in the last 2 years, antidepressants and stress medication has increased by 30%.
Wow.
We have a massive mental health problem in this country, and I dare to say around the world. It is happening everywhere, and our poor young people are like, they are copping the brunt of it because of the lifestyle they lead, because of social media.
I mean, it's not the key problem, but it's certainly a big player.
Yes.
In that psychology.
It's definitely exacerbated it.
And mental health with our young ones.
It is. So there's so many things to look at. So, even though we're only touching on it, there's so many things you need to look at. So when someone comes and says, I think I have PCOS, I think I have endo, yes, you can do hormone testing, yes, you can do blood and saliva testing, all that is absolutely possible and should be done to find out what's going on. There's also things to do with the pituitary gland that releases prolactin, that stops periods. That's another whole conversation. Again, a big driver of that is stress. So, you know, a lot of the women that have these things, you need to ask the question, what are you doing every day that brings you joy and happiness? Where is the balance in your life? You know, if you're a hard worker or you're stressing about family or your work is stressful, or, you know, you're just in an environment where that chronic stress is continuing, you need to maybe step back and have a look and go, how is this working for me?
Yeah.
How is this working for my
We
health
talked
and my
about
future?
this in detail, did we? In one of our other podcasts, when we talked about the impact of stress that stress has on the body.
Yes.
And it's such a domino effect, because even if you're stressed, and even if you only are having like one side effect from stress, or if it creates one side effect, then the minute you have one side effect, it creates a domino.
Yes.
Because that side effect then creates something else, which will create something else, and before you know it, you've got multiple ailments, multiple symptoms of multiple different things, and it all stems back to one thing: stress.
So while these, you know, reproductive issues, stress is one component of it, there are a lot of things that need to be looked at. So it is about diet, lifestyle, your sleep, your social connections, your activity levels. You know, are you going outside? Are you grounding yourself on the earth? Are you going and seeing a sunrise? You know, all these things, loving relationships.
Today?
Yes, I heard that. So we need to go out and have a look at that. Just little things that bring you joy and make you laugh, and, you know, connect you with the world rather than connect you with a device.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's pretty much covered most of that. So once again, ladies, if we have a new, I was going to say toy, but it's not. It's not a new toy.
Yeah. Now you can go and do your test.
Now I can go and do it. We've been waiting to actually do the podcast so I could do it and then send it in. But yeah, look, this is amazing. We've come so far. It's such a relief. So if you see this podcast or are listening to this podcast, please tell every woman you know that there is now a different way and a much more comfortable at-home way of being able to do a pap smear.
So for those ladies or men maybe who are listening to us on Spotify, if you jump over to our YouTube channel, you'll actually see this podcast visual, and you'll get to see what we were talking about. All right. So keep up to date with your tests. It is one of the best ways that we can diagnose things early. So preventative medicine is always going to be, your best friend when it comes to health and longevity.
Long-term health,
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well,
thank you very much. On with my day. I've got a
close
job
the
to go and
bathroom
do.
door. All right.
Bye.
See you, ladies.